I will now walk you through the entire Forgotten Classics family library. In development is a single volume called The New Mother's Companion, Lullabies, Rhymes, and Stories to Share by Heart. A new mother's busy, so each month I give her just one new lullaby or nursery song to learn, a few Mother Goose rhymes to learn by heart, and a simple classic story to practice telling to give mothers what they need for the first 2 years of their baby's life. The Book of Delights has become a favorite of all ages. It's filled with fine art that even your youngest children will delight in, as well as sweet poems and rhymes and some simple stories for your beginning readers. We offer some free bonus books as you build your library, including the Story Bible, which helps you familiarize young ears to beautiful scriptural and poetic language. You can't start too young. Scriptures are the lamp that lights the path. It's also available in special editions where there are spaces to glue the fine art images we've provided to go with many of the stories. The Stories of Jesus is in our store now. The Old Testament version with pictures will be there soon. Poetry for the Well-Educated Heart has selections broken down by the developmental levels I have been describing, as well as the rotation schedule. Restoring the Art of Storytelling will help you along your journey to become a storyteller yourself, the absolute best way to pass values on from generation to generation. Now, to help build strong imaginations, we are working on a 12-volume series of fairy tales and myths from around the world to coincide with the rotation. Fairy tales appeal to all ages, so they make a perfect family read-aloud. The Nature series, as I mentioned before, will not only teach facts of nature, but will help children begin to recognize the lessons and principles that nature teaches us. These writings help to develop observational skills, critical for the study of science that will come later, but more importantly, will give your children a source of great joy in their lives. The first 8 volumes follow the rotation schedule. The final 4 take nature in as a whole and progress from stories for your littlest listeners to stories for your older children. The Sunshine series is a collection of less common children's classics that demonstrate a well-educated heart approach to life and learning. They inspire and warm the heart. Not all the books in this series coincide with the rotation directly. Rather, the first books generally are for younger listeners, the later for more mature readers, so spread them out over the years. Of course, you'll also want to draw from favorites like The Secret Garden, Anne of Green Gables, and Treasure Island, but copies of books like those are still easy to come by, so we aren't planning to reprint them. But do add those books to your library as well. My fine art storybook is under development. It will take a study of art to the next level. A study of art gives children an eye for beauty. I've been acquiring some rare art books with wonderful stories in them that I will share through this series, along with fine art images similar to the layout of my Book of Delights. It will have audio and pictures for notebooking similar to My America Storybook. It will mostly be organized by the rotation. The Cousins series has 24 volumes in it. When the series was written 100 years ago, our world was shrinking, and the authors wanted to teach children to appreciate cultural differences. The intent was love for all God's children. Some of the perspectives are not politically correct today, but rather than abridge them, I kept the original writings and leave it to you to use these as teaching moments with your children. I also included Lucy Fitch Perkins' Twin series and the Cousins of Long Ago series. This is a gentle introduction to the world's history and its people. Young children love to hear about other children. It's also a fun way to introduce geography as they find the various nations on their world globes. The study of these books can be spread out over several years. The Epic and Legendary Heroes series is one of the new series being released this fall. In nearly every major civilization, an epic hero emerged with his hero's journey. Heroes like Siegfried, Roland, Rustum, Odysseus, King Arthur, names that many of our children have never heard of today. The books in this series are retellings for young people. Start with favorites like King Arthur and Odysseus, and over the years unfold the stories until your child is familiar with all of them. The world has created no better teachers of bravery, selflessness, loyalty, and perseverance. Also in development is the Classic Literature for Young People series. Here are introductory stories to the great works of Shakespeare, Chaucer, Spenser, Cervantes, Bunyan, the Bible, and more. As your children become familiar with these works, they will be like old friends when they visit them in later years in their original forms, and will be of great profit to them. My America Storybook and the Freedom Series work hand in hand. Read them concurrently or separately. My America Storybook is a collection of stories taken from dozens of books and allows you to sample the perspectives of many writers and offers a wonderful overview of our nation's history. It has awakened an interest in history in many young people, which is the purpose of this series, to awaken interest. I view it as a gateway to study. There are audios that can be listened to, as well as pictures that can provide a beginning notebooking experience. The Freedom Series layers in a deeper level of understanding of some of the people and events they will be introduced to in the brief stories of My America Storybook. These stories were written by men and women who understood the great price paid for our freedom and were anxious to teach the next generations how to hold on to it. So lessons in liberty are woven into their writings. The final books of both series provide a review of the full sweep of the history they have been learning all year. There will be several opportunities in the library for a sweep of both American and world history, if you're worried about the pieces coming together. The Great Lives series will now introduce them to more lives of many of the great men and women of history. They help our young people to see all the many possibilities of life open to them and show them they can overcome hard things and be part of that uplift of humanity. While modern biographies tend to expose all the warts and flaws, these books are designed to teach and inspire. Young people need heroes in their lives. The flaws can come later when they are mature enough to keep them in perspective. The books are currently organized by topic, great scientists, great musicians, and so forth, but we are now releasing an alternate version where the lives are sorted by the rotation schedule. There are stories for young and older readers. The revised edition will have some additional stories, which we will make available to those of you who have the original series. My World Storybook is another one of our new series and will be similar to My America Storybook, with audios and pictures for notebooking. It is also meant to awaken an interest in the world's history by introducing inspiring stories of key figures. The stories will mostly be taken from Arthur Mee's Thousand Heroes. I'll tell you more about later. I love these stories. Now, there are several world history series that work together to layer an understanding. After all, the world is a really big place. It would be impossible to take it all in one sweep. And even with these books, we can only hope to give our children a taste for learning history, which they will hopefully spend the rest of their lives adding to. Keep in mind, the way people dressed and how they got around and the kinds of houses they lived in may have changed, but human nature has not. It's the lessons in human nature that are the vital part of our history study at this stage of learning. It isn't so much that we need to know about them, but rather what they teach us about ourselves that's important. The World History series was the original series I created. As I searched for books to include, I tried to find those that gave the simplest introductory look at each nation's story that I could find. The World's Freedom series then takes many of these stories to a deeper level and adds in additional stories and figures. I gathered books from some of the all-time best children's history writers: Henrietta Marshall, Mary McGregor, Heron and Poland, Helene Gerber, and others who were so gifted in bringing the events and people to life. And as you read them, you will feel the great struggle for freedom that has been going on for a very long time. That's why I call it the World Freedom Series. The world story in story, song, and art was the monumental work of Eva March Tappan, who will now continue to flesh out the stories your children are becoming familiar with through the eyes of the artist, musician, and storyteller. This is such a priceless collection with so many interesting things to discover and learn. It can serve as a supplemental study to whatever you may be using to study history. We included all of her selections, but reorganized it by the rotation schedule. It took 24 volumes. The Sarah K. Bolton series is going to add another treasure chest of great souls for your older kids to spend time with. She, like the other writers of her day, wrote to inspire hearts. Each story was carefully researched. It wasn't unusual for her to read more than 15 books about the individual before she'd write the chapter about them. She knew many of these men and women personally. They have so much to teach us about how to live more noble and refined lives. I can think of no more important study as our children get ready to leave home than the study of great lives. Another series being completed is the Appreciation series. By now, your students have been exposed to many people and many writings. This particular series will deepen their appreciation of music, literature, poetry, and art as they continue to learn from the treasures the world has left us to study, preparing them for a lifetime of learning. It will suggest to them many works that they will hopefully want to now seek out on their own. In that same vein of lifelong learning, we have reprinted the Delphian course. This was a college-level humanities course specifically designed for women and mothers 100 years ago to study in their homes. They recognized that the more educated the mothers were, the greater their influence. Of course, it's not just for grown women. A mature, motivated high schooler could certainly benefit from it, but mostly it is there for you, the mother. Finally, we come to the Mother's Learning Library. This series is where I gathered some of my favorite writings of the heart educators, so you could study many of the same writings I have been learning from to expand your own understanding. I will never say never, but I feel like these series will complete the Forgotten Classics Family Library. Anyone who reads through these volumes will gain an understanding of our world that I would say far exceeds most of our college graduates. As Susan Schaefer Macaulay wrote, education extends to all life. In fact, an educational system that says, one bright summer's day in the dawn of my youth, there, now you are educated, this piece of paper says so, is doing me a gross disfavor. The truly educated person has only had many doors of interest opened. He knows that life will not be long enough to follow everything through fully. I hope the Forgotten Classics Family Library will open many doors of interest. So you may be wondering, how much does this cost? If you don't mind reading on a device, you can access all of it for free. All of our books are linked on the Forgotten Classics Family Library page that you can get to by clicking on the blue box on the bottom of any page in our website, or simply go to Forgotten Classics in the app. It will take you to a page that looks like this, where you will see the books sorted by the rotation. Just click on the title to access the full book. Or if you click on the button at the top of the page, it will take you to a page where the books are sorted by series. Like I've said, it's not necessary to use the books I'm providing. You can use the same guidelines and assemble your own library with books of your own choosing. But if you like the convenience the Forgotten Classics Library offers, and if you are a book-in-hand person and want to acquire hard copies to build your family library, we try to make it as simple and affordable as we can. Books can be bought individually, but shipping is very costly these days, and acquiring the books one at a time is the most expensive way to go because of shipping costs. Another option is you can buy entire series at once. The price includes shipping and saves you a little bit on individual book prices. But the most popular way is to subscribe to our automatic monthly shipments using our Family Library Builder. Moms say it's like Christmas every month to open their boxes of books. You choose which series you want, and we will ship the books that coincide with that particular month in the rotation schedule. If your children are young and budgets are tight and you want to grow the library while they're growing over their next 10 school years, the library can be built for about $1 a day. I hope that makes it accessible for anyone who wants this library in their home, and the value is even greater when you realize multiple children will likely use it. And who knows, you may be the means of preserving knowledge like this to a much wider circle of friends and neighbors. I see it as food storage for the soul. When you buy 5 or more series, and you can work up to that if you need to, you will receive the Mother's Learning Library for free, as well as 5 bonus books, including the Story Bible, poetry, and storytelling book I described earlier, as well as a couple of others. There is no contract or obligation. Buy what you want when you want. Also, it may be of interest to note that many charter school programs have approved almost all of our books for reimbursement. Which books should you start with? Ideally, every child will eventually work through all of them. Each layer serves a purpose. The only difference is how fast. A high schooler may read through several series in a single year. The layering approach is meant to capture and grow interest through familiarity. If you have a high schooler and you try to jump right into the world story volumes, for instance, it may be like throwing a log on a fire that has not yet been kindled. I suggest that you not discount fairy tales for them, or introductory history stories such as My America Storybook or My World Storybook. I used to shelve my forgotten classics according to series, but I just reorganized my own library this way. I have all the month 1 books together, month 2, and so forth. That way, as each month rolls around, I can easily look to see what my choices are. I wouldn't limit a child. Let him read whatever he's willing to, or whatever you are willing and have time to read to them. And what doesn't get read one year is there to pick up another time through the rotation. And the nature of these books is they can be read more than once with new understanding each time. And if something strikes an interest, look to the larger Libraries of Hope library for additional book suggestions, or do your own search and look for recent books that offer fresh perspectives. This is not meant to be a list of the only books I would have a child read. It's a starting point and a gateway. I can tell you, as I have immersed myself in these stories, my life has changed. My heart is so much richer. I see a God who loves every one of his children, no matter where or when they lived, and who has been speaking to them from the very beginning of our world. He has spoken through prophets and scriptures, but he has also spoken through poets and sages, architects and painters and sculptors, singers and storytellers. He reveals himself in all of his creations, and once our hearts are open to recognize his hand and voice, we will find ourselves surrounded by his love and influence, even in the midst of the messiness of our world. There is a divine melody that runs through the dissonance. Think about it. What generation in all the history of the world has had access to the lessons of history to learn from that this generation has access to? Who has had more lives to study? Who else could have learned from the literature, the art, the music, the poetry of the entire world? We are the generation of the great harvest. Will we let it go to waste? There is a reason to believe this is the age of gathering the fragments of truth spread over the earth into one great whole that will unite us as one family under the fatherhood of God. It is the best of times to be alive, but it will also be the worst of times. So one final thought. Libraries of Hope was built on a desire to create a small library of books that would offer hope. Hope for something better is what keeps us moving forward through hard times. Nature teaches us there must be a winter if we would enjoy a spring. In our day of the great harvest, we can see signs of an approaching winter. More than ever, we need to fill the hearts of our children with hope, and that is exactly what these books have done for me in the many years I have been gathering them. I have found that no matter what I am facing in my personal life or what the world is facing, I can find a story that shows me the way through. I hope the library can do the same for you. And above all, I have a hope for that kingdom of great happiness that has been the plan the whole time. Would you like to build a well-educated heart? Start with this spine of golden stories. Supplement with books of your choosing. Layer deep. Expand wide. The journey of learning never ends.